This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
What grades does each position group deserve for the West Virginia Mountaineers football team going into 2024 as we take into account what players have been lost and what players have been added, whether it be through freshman recruiting or the transfer portal? My partner Jonathan and I are going to talk about on episode 2 of the Golden Blue Breakdown here on Couz's Corner. Stay tuned, and we'll talk about it right after this word from my sponsor.
Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident, are fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer. Your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Couz is here today with my friend, my partner, Jonathan Martin. Jonathan, how you doing?
Hey, good, Couz. Doing well. Glad to be back with you. Episode 2. Hope you and your family are rested and relaxed after vacation. I went right after you. Nothing like coming back to football. So
right,
ready to dive back in, and I guess we're ready to hit the ground running.
We are, man. Yeah, same. I hope you and your family enjoyed your vacation as well. If you guys hadn't had a chance yet, go back and check out episode 1 that Jonathan and I did where we talked about, we did our preseason prediction for the Mountaineers. We went through game by game, said whether we thought Mountaineers would win, whether they'd lose, and kind of broke each game down a little bit. So we went into quite a bit of detail there. Hopefully you'll enjoy that. So go check it out. I will link to it at the end here after the end of this episode. And you can also find it on audio-only platforms as well, if that's your preference, as well as this episode. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you're on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And please hit the thumbs up button if you like what we're doing here on the channel. Well, let's dive right in, Jonathan, to the grades. Obviously, a lot of movement in the portal, in and out. Not as much this year as far as out. Neil Brown and the staff, along with help from Country Roads Trust, have done a really good job of retaining talent on this team the last couple of off seasons. If you go back to the 2021 off season, man, they got decimated by the portal. And then the 22 off season, again, they got decimated by the portal, losing key guys like, Akeem Messador and Daryl Porter and some other guys, just to name a couple. They got absolutely decimated. So, but it was really key pieces they were losing, right? Starters. Last couple off seasons, they've been able to kind of minimize that, and they're losing guys mainly that, may want to go somewhere else and get playing time or things like that. So, but what we're going to do is talk about that, and then what West Virginia's been able to bring in, and then I'll just break down each position. So, Jonathan, real quick, man, I'll let you start. Let's go ahead and start from the top at the quarterback position. What's your grade for the quarterback room?
Yeah, so I'll start out by saying, kind of to piggyback off what you said, I think the key word is managed. They managed the portal better. As you mentioned, Country Roads Trust has a huge part of that. But I feel like as Neil Brown and his staff have become comfortable with the NIL part of it, the portal part of it, they've done well. You're right. They took early on, they took some massive hits. But yeah, quarterback. So it was an interesting group for me. I gave it a B. Was my reasoning behind that was because there really wasn't a whole lot of need for immediate help. Garrett Green obviously is the guy. Nico Markle right behind him is also the guy. 1B, if you want to say that, or it's 1A and 1B. I like what they did for the future. Khalil Wilkins going to be a freshman this year. He's more of a dual threat guy. I love Ryder Burton out of the portal from BYU. This is a kid who was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school. Kind of fits that Garrett Green mold a little bit. His high school numbers were insane. 4,200 yards, 40-plus touchdowns through the air. Reminds you a lot of what Neil Brown likes out of that style. So I went B as a grade. I don't know that we'll get a huge return on that grade at the end of the year. We do plan to look back on this to see how it graded out. But just because I don't see the immediate impact, but I like the additions for the future, I went with a solid B.
I think that's fair. And I honestly, this is right off the bat, we're agreeing. Position number one, I'm going with a B as well. In order to, and it's not that I don't love Garrett Green and Nico, but to me, an A means you're elite. The elite of the elite get an A, right? And I don't think he's there. I don't think he's elite yet. And I think by the end of the season, he may be elite. But right now, with one season of starting under his belt, I give him a B. Same with Nico. You know, he was very good as a backup last year. I think this year he has an opportunity. If he gets a chance, I think this year they will trust him to throw the football more, as Neil Brown talked about in a press conference earlier today, as we record this on July 31st. You know, I think they would trust Nico to throw. Last year when they brought him in, when Garrett went down, they basically had to run the football. This year I think they would trust him a lot more. And I do think we have one of the best backup quarterbacks, definitely in the conference, if not in the country, with, former four-star recruit. And then again, Ryder Burton from BYU. So I do like the room. I like the future of the room. And I give it a B as well. And the only reason I'm not giving an A again is because, to me, A is reserved for elite, and I don't think they're quite elite yet. So so we both go with B on that one. Any more thoughts on quarterback before we move on to the next one?
No, it is ironic that we agreed. Last time on our Penn State prediction, we didn't agree. So we're at least starting out smooth.
That's right.
On this one. But you hit it perfectly. I think there are some things Garrett and Nico both have to work on to push to that A. And the future, I think we both agree, is really bright with what they have.
Yep.
I think both Burton and Wilkins fit the mold of what Neil Brown wants now and going forward. I'm excited about that.
I am too.
But I have to hit the pause button just a bit grade-wise because it does remain to be seen as they get further into their careers at West Virginia. So
Agreed.
I agree with you. We're starting out.
Agreed.
We're starting out good.
All right, let's go on to the running backs. I'll go first on this one because I can't help it. I'm going with an A. I wouldn't trade our running back room, West Virginia running back room, for any running back room in the country. I love what we got in Jaheim White and C.J. Donaldson. You've got a perfect 1-2 punch of power and speed, thunder and lightning, as I like to call them. C.J. is going to be healthy for the first time since probably halfway through his freshman season. Fully healthy, I mean. Last year he was battling a shoulder deal that, he didn't talk about it. He didn't complain. He didn't use it as an excuse, but he was battling a shoulder injury. Neil Brown talked about that in one of his spring pressers, I think. So, he's healthy. And with a healthy C.J. Donaldson, with the explosiveness of Jaheim White, and then I add in Jalen Anderson to the mix. I don't think you can, Jalen Anderson is a really good running back. He would start probably for a lot of teams, in my opinion. He does have some things he needs to get better at. He needs to be more consistent. But I think when you look at this West Virginia running back room, I'm giving it an A. What are your thoughts?
So we're close. Actually, I'm not far off. But I went B plus.
Okay.
Here's why. Grade-wise, we might disagree slightly. Overall view of the group, we completely agree. I tell you why I went B plus. It kind of plays off of what you said. I have to see Donaldson healthy for a full year. And you could argue you have to see him healthy for more than 3 or 4 games. I love Jaheim White. Love him. Neil Brown, even as you said, we're recording this today, met with the press, and he was baffled that not one question about Jaheim White was asked of him at preseason Big 12 Media Day. He was baffled by that. But I have to see, does that carry over the second half of the season, what we saw from him, to this year? Is there a sophomore slump? You actually mentioned Jalen Anderson. How can you have that good of a third-string running back if you want to call him third string? Right. They didn't take any huge hits in the portal. Justin Johnson was a guy you probably would have liked to retain. They're really excited about 2 running backs they're bringing in as freshmen, probably going to need some time. Yeah, so I went B plus, and it's weird to give the same explanation maybe as you, but a little bit of a different grade. I just it's one of those scenarios where I want to see it. I believe we'll see it, but Donaldson has to show me he's healthy for the duration of the season, and I'm curious to see now that the word is out on Jaheim. How is he play? Because he kind of burst on the scene late. I don't think a lot of people quite knew about him. So be curious there. I think that all the talent in the world in that room, it's as deep as maybe I can remember it. But I'll be curious to see how it goes. So I went B plus.
Okay, that's fair. I'm writing these down, by the way. If you guys see or hear me pausing here.
Yeah, same here.
So I got A on running backs, and you've got B plus on running backs. All right. Same explanation. You're a tough grader, man.
Well,
I say
we'll
that.
see.
Heck, it might flip in a minute. It might flip.
Yeah, looking back on
All
it,
right.
I could be completely wrong. Who knows? It's the beauty of it.
Well, B plus A, we're splitting hairs really anyway at that point, right? All right, let's go on the wide receiver room. They started last year with a couple receivers who ended up leaving the team after 4 games. And it seemed, and they also had Devin Carter there, right? So they were really young, with the exception of Devin Carter, who graduated. For those who don't remember, he was a transfer that came in out of NC State before last season. He had a solid year. I think he caught over 50 balls a year ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. So he had a good year. So they lose him. He's actually on the Carolina Panthers roster right now, so doing pretty well. They did lose the other 2 guys. Jeremiah Aaron was one. The other one, to be honest, I don't even remember his name. Jonathan, maybe you do. I don't know.
I think with Cortez
Braham. Yep. There you go. Cortez Braham. To be honest, those 2 guys didn't live up to expectation. Anyway, I think they were losing their spot. They were going to be losing some snaps to the younger guys, and I think they realized that and went ahead and decided to get out and hit the portal. But some young guys really stepped up. Hudson Clement stepped up. Traylon Ray stepped up. And those 2 guys, one was a redshirt freshman, one was a true freshman. I think they're going to get even better. And the fact that Rodney Gallagher has a year under his belt playing the position, a position he didn't play in high school. He was another 4-star recruit alongside of Ray. Then from the portal, they bring in Jaden Bray from Oklahoma State, who killed West Virginia last year in our game against them. And they bring in Justin Robinson from Mississippi State. Okay. And heck, I'm just going to go ahead and include Cole Taylor, the pass catching tight end. I'm going to go ahead and throw his name in here too. I think he deserves a shout out. I'm giving this group a B. Actually, I'm going to go B minus because I still think that we need to see more. I think the talent is there. But I really like what they did. If you take what they lost versus what was brought in, I think they made a huge upgrade. But I still need to see more in order to give them a B or an A. So I'm going with a B minus.
Okay. Well, we're not too far off. I went B plus. And to echo what you said, I feel like this receiver group going into camp, going into the season, is in a much better place. Much better place. And I think because we know a little bit more now. We know what Traylon Ray has. We know what Hudson Clement has. I'd mentioned, I don't know that you touched on, but Preston Fox, a possession receiver. If we're including the tight ends, we kind of talked about that. Cole Taylor, we know now. So I feel like we're in a better place. It's a good mix for me. There's good speed. There's possession. And there's some size and strength. Justin Robinson he's a dude. Jay Bray, he's a dude. Yeah, and you talked about it. Neil Brown even made a comment about Bray. He said, he beat us so bad last year, I had to get him. So I like this group. I'll tell you a name to keep an eye on. They lost E.J. Horton in the portal. I know they were excited about the speed. But Day Farmer was a flip late 4-star kid. was committed to UCF, Central Florida, flipped to West Virginia late. He's dynamic, can run, just kind of reminds you of the old Jock Sanders days, just kind of scatters around the field. I think at some point, special teams, I know we're talking receivers, but he'll make a play there. So I like this group. I like the depth. I think they're more comfortable, especially with Garrett at quarterback this year. So yeah, we're close. I went B+ on it.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up Dede Farmer. Great. He's already in the 2 deep, and he hasn't even – I mean, he wasn't even there for spring ball because he was still in high school. But they're expecting him to play a lot. You know, if they've got him in the 2 – and I know the preseason depth chart doesn't mean a whole lot. I get that. But Neil Brown's even said in meeting with the media that he expects him to play this year. So that's how talented that young man is. So I'm glad you brought him up. And, of course, they did lose E.J. Horton, but, you know, E.J. Horton was fast. And he made a few great plays last year. But, you know, at the end of the day, when you look at production numbers, they're not losing a whole lot with E.J. Horton. Yeah. If you're looking at strictly what he did last year. Yeah,
and we talked at the start of this, you know, Coach Brown and the staff have managed the portal, whether and that's additions and that is subtractions. And I believe they knew when EJ left what they had coming in with Dede Farmer, at least had a shot. I don't think at that point they knew he was a lock, but I think they felt pretty good with what Coach Marshall and Coach Scott, the relationship. And so, yeah, the depth charts preseason, they're funny, right? Because on one hand, they don't tell you a lot, but on the other hand, they do. And when you see a true freshman listed there, it at least tells you what they think they have. He's got to go prove it. But I like where this group is at today versus last year. And they're returning some production, not without question marks, but I like them.
Yep. Great breakdown there. Again, Jonathan has them at a B+. The receiving core, I have them at a B- only because I still want to see more. I think they can do even more this year. So let's move on. And that includes tight end Cole Taylor, by the way, because he is known more for his pass catching, even though he's not a bad blocker. I don't want to undersell his blocking, but he's known more as a pass catcher. And matter of fact, I think he led the team in interceptions last year. So, all right, let's go to offensive line. Now, I'm going to let you start with this one, Jonathan. I'm going to let you go first here.
Yeah, so to start it off, I went with a B-. That could probably be met with a little bit of resistance because they're going to be an extremely talented group, I believe. But I think they're going to have to rely on some guys in some positions that maybe don't have a ton of snaps. Might have to move some guys around. And part of my reasoning was not the addition and or what is coming back, but what they lost. You can't undervalue what Zach Frazier meant to the line as a leader, as a captain, now in NFL, Pittsburgh Steelers. So I thought that was a fair grade. Excited about what they brought in. If my thoughts are right, Xavier Bosley came in as a West Virginia kid from Jacksonville State, was an interesting player. Went to Jacksonville State and played and was a All-American there, freshman. But that worked out well for West Virginia in the portal because I don't know that he comes to West Virginia last year as a freshman and gets that experience against Big 12 competition. So he went there. He played in a lot of games, got the repetitions down there, got the snaps. And I think they'll plug him in pretty quick to play. But I'm also concerned about not just losing Zach as a player, but just as a leader and what he meant to the team and the line.
Right. And that's fair. My grade is not far off from yours. I'm giving them a B. I think, you know, if we had done this a year ago, I probably would have given this group an A. But, you know, like you said, losing Zach Frazier is huge, second-round draft pick. I think losing Doug Nestor is also big. Doug Nestor, yeah, he didn't get drafted, but he was a very, very good offensive lineman. And I think losing those two guys, especially Zach, it's hard to replace that. You can't really. I'm not saying Brandon Yates can't do a good job there, but he's not going to be Zach Frazier. And it's not even fair to expect him to be Zach Frazier. But I also think I'm not going to drop them all the way down to a B- or a C, because I think you got Wyatt Milam there at left tackle, who has a very good chance of being a first-round draft pick, right? He's very talented.
Yeah.
And you got Tomas Rimac as well at left guard, who Phil Steele has a second-team All-Big 12 guard. Again, and you have Yates and Hubbard, who, even though, have been up and down during their career, they both have a lot of snaps under their belt while in Morgantown. And then Nick Malone at the right tackle spot, who's expected to be the starter there. Again, a guy with a lot of snaps and has played almost every position on that line. So very versatile. And then I don't think you can underestimate Xavier Bosley, the transfer from Jacksonville State, who could potentially push Malone for that starting right tackle spot. And I think he's, a West Virginia kid who came back home, very talented, very high expectations for him. So I really like this group. So I'm giving them a B. Like I said, the only thing keeping me from giving them an A or a B+ is Zach Frazier is just too good of a player not to miss. And I do think the left side of the line is going to be much stronger than the right side of the line. And, and opponents are going to notice that. So that might create some problems potentially.
Yeah.
At times, if you play a team that's really, really good defensively up front and has a good defensive scheme and coaching staff, so that concerns me a little bit, but I still think they're going to be good enough to, I don't know that they'll be the top running defense in the country again like they were a year ago, or in the Power 5, but I do think they can be really good again. And so, I'm giving the offensive line a B.
Yeah, I'll tell you another name too, Johnny Williams. It's backing up Wyatt Milam on that left side. Coaches loved him. They loved him when they got out of Florida. He's big, 6'7.5", 315, 320. They are, in fact, I was told a couple times during the portal, that was one they were trying to make sure no SEC schools came knocking on the door. They were thrilled to keep him more comfortable on that left side. So I don't know if they would look to slide him over. But yeah, I agree with you. I like what they have. My grade was more on just overall totality of what Frazier, and great point on Nestor, what they brought to the unit. But I think this group does have a chance to be really good.
Yeah, I do too. And, some hardcore WVU fans might come at me for my B grade. But again, that's how good Zach Frazier is to me. He's that good. Yeah. And I don't think losing him, to me, how can you give him an A when you just lost one of the best linemen maybe to ever step foot in Morgantown? So
agree. I agree.
So again, just like one of the positions earlier, our grades are slightly different, but our reasoning is basically the same.
Yep.
All right. Before we jump over to the defensive side of the ball, I want to give a quick shout out to a new sponsor here at Couz's Corner, BetUS, where the game begins.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
Let's jump right in to the defensive side of the ball, Jonathan. Let's go ahead and start off on the defensive line, man, and I'm going to let you lead this one off.
Yeah, so this one was a little bit tricky. This one, and we'll get into the secondary, was probably the two I felt really comfortable on offense. I felt like I had good reasoning for what I did. The defense was a little bit more tricky for me. And I think at the end, my reasoning is what they lost concerned me, but what they have back and what they gained, I was more excited about. This may blow you away, and maybe I'm just trying to get some love from people. I don't know. I went A+. I know. I'll tell you why. First off, I'll get the subtractions out of the way. Tomowa Durage left to go to Florida State. He was always in the middle of the football, on the line, loved what he had, right? Mike Lockhart went to SMU. His time at West Virginia, I thought he filled a need. I actually thought he overperformed maybe some of those expectations. Returning wise, Sean Martin, been in the program. He's gotten bigger, stronger, faster, better. Love him as returner. So I like what we've got there. But I want people to know a name that I'm actually – it's crazy to me that this guy is not getting more attention. I plan on writing a little bit about him coming up. Ty French. Now, I'm going to read it. I normally don't do a lot of reading. But when I was studying on the team a little bit, shame on me maybe for not knowing this in depth. So check this out, Couz, in case you don't know. From Gardner-Webb, he was an FCS All-American, 6'3", 230. Now check these numbers out. Last year, 68 tackles, 22.5 for loss, 9.5 sacks. He forced 3 fumbles last year. Now, how many times he hit the quarterback? 18. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He never completed a full season with fewer than 14.5 tackles for loss or fewer than 61 tackles. That dude gets it done. He flat out gets it done. So I like him. I think they got speed. I think they got athleticism, especially on the edge. TJ Jackson comes in from Troy. He was productive there. Your reaction said exactly what I thought it would be when I said A+. But I tell you, I love what they've got coming back. These guys coming in, especially Ty French, they're big, strong, fast, athletic. If you don't know the names now, you're going to know them soon. I went A+.
I love it. I love it. Hey, my reaction is what it is, but I love it.
That's worth the click on the subscribe button, right? That I went A+.
There you go. There you go.
Revision, so.
Yeah, I'm not quite A+.
Okay.
Only because they don't have quite the depth they had. Last year they were going 9, 10, 11 guys deep, right? I don't think they're going to be able to do that this year, for one thing, because of the losses of Lockhart and Durajaye. And then they've got Corey McIntyre, who they were expecting to be a big contributor this year, is down with a season-ending injury. So, Asani Redwood coming back from injury. Now, he should be healthy, according to Coach Brown. But, again, he has been decimated with injuries or has dealt with injuries since he's been in Morgantown. He's expected to probably be in the 2 deep or at least be vying for some snaps, and he has a strong upside. But when, you look at your starters, like you mentioned Sean Martin. I do expect big things out of Sean Martin this year, but he still has to do it. To be honest, right now, I'm not sure he's lived up to his potential. I think he will this year because I think he's playing with a chip on his shoulder, and I think he's playing, as Aubrey Burke said in an interview earlier back in the spring, it's a contract year, and I think Sean Martin can say the same thing. He's playing for that NFL draft pick. And, an interview I did with someone from the East-West Shrine Bowl, NFL scouts drool over Sean Martin. He's 6'5", 295 pounds. He's got length. He's got athleticism. He just has to be more consistent. If he can do that, then I think they're worth an A, but I've got to see him do it. You mentioned Ty French. You mentioned TJ Jackson. I do think those guys have the potential to be that good, but can they do it at the Power 4 level? So, to me, that's a question mark. I think they can, but they have to show me. And then Edward Vestarenin at the other tackle spot, I really like what he brings, and I really like Fatorma Mulba or Hammond Russell at nose. But, again, can they do it consistently? They have to be consistent. Neither one of those guys started a year ago. So, to me, there's just a lot of even though I think the talent's there, I think it'll be a solid group. There's still a lot of question marks to me, so I'm going to give them a B.
Okay. Well, we just a little bit of separation. So we were good, right? But yeah, listen, your points are valid, well taken. And maybe we're thinking the same, just looking at it from a different side. I feel like the guys coming in do have to prove it at this level. But I think they spend enough time at that lower level, the FCS level, that I just feel a little bit maybe better about the fact that they can do it. Depth is, we could say the same thing about offensive line, defensive line. That interior health is always a huge, huge question mark.
Yep.
It takes one player in a pile, right? So But yeah, I think we're both excited about it. I'm just really, really high on that group, and that'll definitely be one where we look back, and I'm going to look like a genius, or I'm going to look, why am I on this show? So
Yeah.
I'm rolling that dice.
I will say this though. You mentioned TJ Jackson. I mentioned him kind of in passing. Probably should have mentioned him more. He is one of the highest graded defensive linemen per Pro Football Focus in the Big 12 coming into 2024. So
yeah,
he's a talented young man. Okay, he played for Coach Rod down at Jacksonville State, so he's been well coached. He's been, Coach Rod's got that hard edge about him, so he's been coached hard. So he's not going to be afraid of coaching. I like that. Actually, I'm sorry, he went to Troy, didn't he?
Yeah, Troy.
TJ Jackson, my fault. I had him confused with somebody else. But I was thinking of Xavier Bosley on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, TJ went to Troy. So my thought on that. Anyway, but still, it comes from a really good program down there at Troy. So he's been well coached. He knows how to play. He's probably going to know how to play the position. And everything I've heard about TJ Jackson, everything I've read about TJ Jackson is really, really good. So I do think he's going to be a good football player. I just got to see it. That's kind of where I'm at. With these guys that come up from a lower level, it usually takes them a few games, if sometimes a whole season to adjust. And I don't think they're going to have that luxury, to be honest with you, at some of these spots. So, but I'm a little bit concerned about it. That's why I went B instead of A on that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to find out quick, right? Penn State, one of the best offensive lines in the country. We're going to find out real quick. Can these guys make that transition like we've talked about? Can Sean Martin have that consistency right out of the gate? So yeah, the good news or bad news is we're going to find out pretty quick.
Yeah. And shameless plug, by the way, I had the privilege of interviewing Sean Martin here on the show, I don't know, back a couple months ago. So I'm going to leave a link to that in the comment section. Anyway, let's move on to the next position, which to me, it might be the position. It's definitely the position on the defensive side of the ball that I'm the highest on, and that's the linebacker position. What do you have at the linebacker position?
So linebackers, let me see here. This was an interesting one for me. It was actually my lowest graded, and so actually went C+. We'll take a little bit of a hit there. I know. I'll tell you why. It was a group where they didn't hit real hard in the portal, right? Reed Carrico from Ohio State. Everybody wanted him out of high school, 4-star kid. He kind of got lost in the shuffle, kind of got lost in the depth chart a little bit. And so what's he going to bring to us? To me, that's a question mark. There's some injuries there coming back. Trey Lathan, I'll be interested to see what he has. I'm extremely excited. I think you are too about Josiah Trotter. But again, what's that going to look like coming off of an injury? So those are huge question marks for me. To come back and immediately go into tough games right out of the gate, Big 12, the schedule we've talked about. So because of the injuries, I'm concerned at the health and what they're going to be like for me. And I didn't think that the additions coming into the program, which tells me that they're happy with what they have, but I didn't think there was anything earth-shattering, immediate impact in what they brought in. And we talked earlier about subtractions. And Lee Koba was another one of those leaders just on the defensive side of the ball. He was everywhere. So I think there's a little bit of adjustment there. So I might get loved for the A+ on the defensive line, but I just brought everybody back down on linebacker. Just not thrilled about what they brought in, excited about what they have back, but health-wise, kind of like you were earlier, I just feel like I need to see it.
Okay. Now, this is going to be kind of a hot take, maybe hot take of the show. It might be even hotter than your A+ at D-line, but I'm giving this group an A. And I know that sounds crazy for some of you, but here's why. I feel like I've seen enough from Trey Lathan to know how good he is. Had he not gotten injured last year, I feel like he might have been an all Big 12 guy, right? Second team at least, maybe honorable mention, but he would have been up there in the conversation. He was leading the team, I believe, in QB hurries or QB hits, one of those categories. He was playing really, really good football, right? And you noticed it when he was not there. They took a step back. Nothing against Ben Cutter, right, who I'll talk about in a minute. But they took a step back when he wasn't there. Yes, they lose Lee Koba. I get that, and I think that needs to be taken into account. But I just really think the guys that we have on the roster now are more talented than Lee Koba. Lee Koba was, he played with a huge chip on his shoulder, had a very high motor, but he struggled in pass coverage at times. And I'm just not sure, and I think teams are able to expose that. But I think the guys they got now, I just think they're going to be better. Josiah Trotter, I remember from the time I watched his high school tape coming in before last season, I watched his tape and I'm thinking this kid's going to start as a freshman potentially. Yeah. And Neil Brown even said he could have. That's how good he is. And I felt a little bit validated today when I was listening to Neil Brown's press conference because he said something that I kind of said on a show a few days ago. I'm not worried about Josiah Trotter's lack of experience and him being out last year because he grew up in a home with a dad who played in the NFL, arguably one of the best linebackers to ever play for the Philadelphia Eagles. His brother is a great football player. He's a great football mind. He's going to have the high IQ. He was able to sit through every film session last year. Yes, he wasn't there physically, but I think physically he's ready to go anyway. And Coach Brown said something today that made me feel good too. Both he and Lathan both went through spring ball. So they've already been hit. They've already had a tackle. They've already been on the ground. So hopefully that got any mental blocks they had from the injury. Hopefully that's behind him now, right?
Yeah.
I think they'll be hit. And with Reed Carrico, I know he didn't have a lot of shots at Ohio State, but we have to realize he was playing against 4- and 5-star guys every single practice, and that's who he was behind on the depth chart. So even if he doesn't start, I think he'll get a lot of snaps and be a valid addition. And then with Ben Cutter, didn't grade out real high according to Pro Football Focus, but he was a true freshman who really wasn't ready yet. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of misfits with him. He didn't always know where to go and when to go there. I don't think he's going to know that this year. I think he'll be more prepared. So if he does have to come in. Now, they do lose Ja Faveras, who was a backup linebacker. They're losing him, unfortunately, to what Neil Brown called probably a career-ending injury. So that'll hurt the depth a little bit, but I'm not sure how much he was going to play. And then they do have Caden Beiser there, too, who has taken some snaps at the linebacker spot. So, yes, Lee Koba's out, but I don't know that we'll miss Lee Koba that much because I think Josiah Trotter and Trey Lathan will be able to fill that gap just fine.
Yeah. And another name, Jared Bartlett, went on to play.
That's fair.
His final year at Cincinnati. I feel like we're kind of playing the record over and over again, but I think we agree on a lot of that. But maybe you're looking at it a little bit more of where you feel comfortable with coming back from injuries, where maybe I've got a little bit more of a question mark about it.
I think that's
But I think we completely agree on the end result that talent-wise, it's there. I'm just nervous about just exactly how healthy. It should also be noted, too, that Neil Brown said today that both Latham and Trotter were full participants today, first day. So that's a great sign. That's a great sign going forward and kind of goes into where your thinking was.
Yeah. And by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Tyron Bradley, who is replacing Jared Bartlett. It used to be called the bandit position. Now I think they're calling it the spur position as they're going more to a true 3-4 type defense. But I think Tyron Bradley has more upside than Jared Bartlett did. Jared Bartlett didn't impress me a whole lot. Nothing against the young man. I just don't ever feel like he would have 1 or 2 great games, and then it's like you never heard from him again. So I don't know losing him is going to hurt him that much, other than other than his experience.
Yeah, and Bradley, if you'll remember, I mean, he made SportsCenter top 10 on the Mayo Bowl with the interception. Was just an athletic move. So athletically, I think he's capable of filling that spot.
Yeah. All right, now we're down, Jonathan, to the secondary. Let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and combine the safeties for sake of time, the safeties and the corners into one here. What are your thoughts on the secondary?
Yeah, so for me, it's a B plus. I guess I'll start by saying Beanie Bishop is going to be just a huge loss. Consensus All-American. I'm not quite sure whenever he entered the portal and came to West Virginia. I don't think we knew quite what we were getting there. And he just exceeded all expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a hit. But I'm really intrigued when I look at this group. I see, again, a good mix of experience. Some guys have proven it 2 and 3 years. Some guys earn their way up through the junior college ranks and at the FCS level, and then now they're here. Extremely high on Garnett Hollis Jr. I think he'll be a great player from Northwestern. Played a lot of snaps there, started a lot of games. The question's going to be the adjustment. They're throwing a lot of guys, Couz, in that secondary that are just kind of not familiar with each other. But because Neil Brown identified that position as a need, a priority, and because of the overall collection of that group, that's why I graded it the way I did, because they got such a return out of the portal. And I think there's enough guys there. Jaheim Joseph is another guy, more safety, since we're combining the two. Another Pro Football Focus, highly rated there. I think he was 4th. So, yeah, just really excited with what they brought in.
Now, did you say B plus or C plus?
I went B plus. I'm not going to go double whammies back to back, because I can't do that.
Well, I apologize. I didn't hear what you said, so
yeah,
I want to make sure I wrote it down right. I actually wrote it down C plus, so I want to make sure I heard you right.
Yeah, B plus. I like the overall group. They identified a need, they hit it. It was a large group they brought in and a good mix of guys. So yeah, B plus.
Okay, I'm going to go B here. I'm questioning, just like I did with some of the guys that's done the defensive line. I'm a little concerned about the guys moving up from lower levels, the Aiden Garneses of the world, the TJ Crandalls, the Kokora Tarnu, who's going to play that safety spot, cat safety spot probably. I'm a little concerned about those guys moving up, because we've seen in the past sometimes those guys, it takes them time. I mean, it takes them a half a season to a season, and they don't really have that luxury, right? Again, the loss of Beanie Bishop is massive. I think losing Malachi Ruffin was big, because he was a 6-year guy. He was experienced. He was a leader. Even though I think overall, the talent is probably more, though, in this group. And I think that's why I'm not going lower than a B, and the depth. Last year they had very little depth. I mean, you had Malachi Ruffin and Bishop. Neither one of those guys hardly ever came off the field. So, because you had Jacoby Spells back there, but and he did some good things, but I'm not sure he was ready yet. And then he's going to be hopefully back. He's been out with an injury, but hopefully he's going to be back for the season opener. But he's a 3-year guy, right? So he's got 2 years in the system, so he's going to be able to help some of the guys who are coming in. And then the 2 Jackson brothers, Jordan and Josiah, pretty high on them, but they're young. They're redshirt freshmen. So I was actually starting. My gut was I almost went with a C here because of all the question marks, but because of the depth that they have, and then Coach Brown said they've got more depth in secondary than they've had since he's been here. So for that reason, and how could we leave out Aubrey Burks?
Yeah,
because of the depth and the talent of Aubrey Burks and his leadership, I'm putting him in a B.
Yeah. Again, and you can tell there's a trend here, right, with what they brought in. They went with some FCS guys, but that's the thing about the portal. Some of your bigger schools are just going to be able to target SEC schools are going to be able to go to the Big Ten and the Big 12, and they plug these guys. Schools like West Virginia got to roll that dice a little bit more. Yeah, and I agree. I think just because of the overall nature of what they got and just the mix of the group. But again, just kind of same song and dance. These guys are going to have to prove it. They're not at Gardner-Webb anymore, and they're not at Colorado State anymore. But again, to what I said to open my comment about them, Beanie came from Minnesota, and there was some question marks. So can you strike gold there again? Coaches feel like they can. Another play, you're right about the depth. It was, if you think about it, looking back, it's unbelievable that Malachi Ruffin and Beanie put up the numbers they did for the amount of time they were on the field. You were down to Andrew Wilson Lamp backing up, and it just spiraled out of control quick when those guys had to come off the field. So I like the depth overall. So that's kind of why I graded it where I did, but it'll be curious, and I think you'll find out pretty quick with this schedule what you have.
And they lost Marcus Floyd and Hershey McLaurin from safety spots. One to graduation and one to the transfer portal. But I'll be honest with you, I felt like safety was one of the weak points of the team last year, and losing those two guys, I think the guys they're replacing them with will be better. And let's look. Got to give a shout out to Anthony Wilson. He'll be back for his senior year. He came on a lot last year in the second half of the year. Was second on the team in tackles, I believe. He's small. He's only 5'9", so he struggles at times in pass coverage. But I really like what he brings to the table as well. And so with him and Aubrey Burks back there anchoring that safety room, I like it now. They got more experience. And like you mentioned, the other guys and the other guys of the mix. I like the depth there. But real quick, I know we got let's get some love to special teams. I don't think we plan to do this, but as I'm going through the depth chart here, I felt like it's fair to do that. I'm going to special teams. I'm going to give an overall special teams grade of A. I really like the special teams group. I love what we have with Michael Hayes. I love what they have with Ollie Straw, Preston Fox returning punts. They're going to have more time now to spend with kickoff return, kickoff coverage, all that kind of stuff because of the extra coaches they have now that are able to coach. So I really like, and I think they're going to make a lot of tweaks there. And I think they've also recruited with special teams in mind. They're recruiting bigger bodies to help play special teams. So I think special teams is going to be a strong point for this team this year. And we can't forget we might have the best long snapper in college football in Austin Brinkman.
Yeah.
So I'm going with an A.
Point. Great point. Yeah, and it's funny because I don't know that either one of us had planned for special teams. So it's funny you brought it up. And before you had really said a grade, it was kind of what I was thinking, an A. And I'll tell you why. It's just consistency across the board, right? I mean, Michael Hayes, you know what you're going to get. It's pretty consistent. Now, it's probably not his play at 55 yards, but you got to kind of know his comfort zone, but consistent. Love Ollie Straw. Love what he brings. Preston Fox felt really comfortable, no issues there. Austin Brinkman, I mean, a great point by you to bring him up. It's always kind of unheralded, I guess, but the snap's most important part. It's just kind of one of those you're unnoticed until it goes wrong. And he's been really good, really good. Be interested to see Hudson Clement, Rodney Gallagher, if they're going to kind of get them in the mix a little bit. I don't know if Jaheim may return some kicks. We'll see. But I think an A is pretty fair because of just a consistency. You're not replacing anybody, right? So kickers back, punters back, returners are back. And because of that, I think A's a good grade because you're not replacing and you like what you have back.
Yeah. Sorry to throw that on you last minute there. I know we didn't prepare for that, but as I'm looking over the depth chart and I see it on there, I'm like, you know what? Let's go ahead and throw it out there. I think I think they deserve it. They don't get enough love.
Sure.
But
So
I know it's almost 50 minutes long. I know you and I didn't think that it would take this long to go through this, but it's been a lot of fun. I'm just going to recap our grades real quick for everybody. Quarterback, we both have the position room graded out as a B. Running back room, I have an A. Jonathan has a B+. Wide receiver room, I have a B-. Jonathan had a B+. And that includes tight ends, by the way. Offensive line, I had a B. Jonathan had a B-. Defensive line, I had a B. He had an A+. Linebackers, I had an A. He had a C+. So we kind of flip-flop. And then DBs, which is safeties and corners, I had a B. He had a B+. And in special teams, we both graded out with an A. So that's, again, preseason grades. Jonathan and I hope to revisit this at the end of the season and, see where they grade out at the end of the season. It'll be a fun exercise to follow this and track it and see where we differ.
Yeah, and hearing those back, we agree on majority. Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple positions where, weirdly enough, I think we agree, but our concerns are either elevated or they're alleviated. Right. And so that's the beauty of what we're doing. And one of the reasons why we kind of wanted to go this route is because I think a lot of people have the same questions and concerns in the portal area and or era. And it'll be interesting to look back and see not who was right, who was wrong, but how close we got to the mark. So will be interesting to see, and not surprised that we kind of came at it about the same. I thought we would be pretty close. A couple there that were maybe a little bit separate more than I thought. But we'll see how it looks here and towards the end of the season.
Yep, absolutely. Real quick, Jonathan, before we get out of here, man, let everybody know where they can find you at on social media and whatnot.
Yeah, so pretty much on X is where I'm at on everything. You can see it on the screen there. It's at Jonathan K. Martin. So it's pretty much where I'm at all times. Hope to ramp up some content there as the season gets a little bit closer. We're already involved at. Do have a podcast, a Jonathan Martin podcast, just something that we've kind of started and look to ramp that up a little bit more. I'm sure there'll be a ton of storylines as the season goes. So, but all that can be on X at Jonathan K. Martin.
Thank you for that. And hope you guys enjoyed episode number 2. And by the way, if you're listening to this on audio only, Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever, Google Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star review. That helps us a lot. It helps get more people, helps get the content pushed out to more people. And do that as well on Jonathan's podcast. Go over to his podcast, listen to it. I did. I really enjoyed it. And give him a 5-star review. Appreciate the shout out, by the way, Jonathan. So go listen to Jonathan Martin podcast. And by the way, Thursday night, August 1st, which probably today because I plan on releasing this on August 1st. But anyway, August 1st, 6 p.m. Eastern time, Mountaineer Roundtable. It'll be Jonathan, hopefully myself. I may have a conflict. I'm not sure yet, but I'm hoping to be there. But it'll be Jonathan. It'll be the Earbeard, who's a popular West Virginia personality on X, as well as has his own podcast as well. Mike Ostie, some other really good content creators and journalists and whatnot from the West Virginia space will be on Spaces to just talk Mountaineer football, talk about the upcoming season and whatnot. So that ought to be a really good time. Some of the most popular personalities, I guess, in and around West Virginia athletics. So it should be a good time. We did it last year. It was really fun. So it should be fun again this year. So everybody come check that out. If you have an account on X or Twitter, whatever you call it, come and listen to that tomorrow night, or tonight rather, at 6 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a blast. I'll tell you, it's because everybody's moving and shaking in so many different directions. It's rare that all of us can get together. But one thing I'll say for West Virginia fans is it's kind of a one-stop shop. Everybody does their own thing, but everybody collaborates a little bit, and we don't mind to get together. Have tons of respect for all those guys and what they're doing, and just something I think we're all excited to bring, whether it be my podcast, this show, others. We're just excited to all get together and just bring the best content we can for West Virginia and everybody else.
Absolutely. Again, shout out to the sponsors of the show, BetUS and Couz, Stone Street, and Buckner, attorneys at law. Thanks to them for making everything possible, helping me keep the lights on. With that said, we appreciate everybody for listening and for watching. And until next time, Q Country Roads.